And we are back for another episode of the Black Stitch Hockey Cast here on Sunday night. Um, it's been a pretty wild week for those of you who were with Liam and to some degree myself for 4 hours back on Friday night for round one. That was definitely an adventure in and of itself. Um, obviously, the world of hockey continues to be incredibly fascinating as day two had its own share of intrigue as well as the events of the last few days in the hockey. Most notably, probably outside of the draft, which we covered in depth, the Mikhail Sergachev trade that brought him out to Utah. Lots of intrigue, though, for sure, going on in the last couple of days.
Yeah. So it was funny, like, in a vacuum, the Tanner Jennett deal looked like ass, but it was just like, in the broader context of, like, them clearing the runway and making a mark on the market with some additional cap space, it was definitely interesting how it played out, and also a little bit puzzling for reasons we discussed behind closed doors about like Gensel was really the guy that they were targeting in that front office down in Tampa. It's like, hmm.
It's definitely intriguing. I saw some. I've seen a lot of mixed opinions so far on the internet on what Tampa Bay is doing. I see a lot of people maybe questionably praising their aggressiveness over the last few days, really citing Vegas and Florida's recent commitment to, throwing their roster in the blender despite being successful in an effort to win a championship. Which, I'm all for, big Randy Marsh wheelbarrow energy out of executive groups in the National Hockey League. When I look at the maneuvers that Tampa's making, this is akin to what I didn't like about what Rob Blake was doing a year ago in Los Angeles of like, moving Jeannot, you know, the fact that a team gave up, decent draft capital to get him a second time in and of itself is fairly fucking remarkable based on what he's done in his career.
Yeah.
But like the thought to move on from like in really backpedaling to a much earlier move in this offseason of bringing back Ryan McDonough at almost a $7 million cap hit is definitely very very interesting. Of you went out, you brought back Ryan McDonough to then subsequently move Mikhail Sergachev in an effort to get mm, like maybe what Connor Geeky to be your 2C despite having zero NHL experience at this point in time, and potentially going out and getting, Jake Gensel, which, like, sure, if you're running a Hagel Point Kucherov, top line next year, and some weird junked up combination of Connor Sherry, either Anthony Sorelli slash, Connor Geeky and Jake Gensel, like, it's not, it's not exactly, like, daunting the way that people are like praising it to be of like, yeah, is Jake Gensel a fucking perennial 30 goal, 70 point star player? Sure. But to move on from Steven Stamkos and then subsequently like to move on from Mikhail Sergachev in his prime on what I think would have been considered a great deal by the end of the contract to go out and like I have nothing against JJ Moser, but like McDonough Moser isn't gonna move the needle the way that a healthy Sergachev did for them, and a healthy 30-year-old Jake Gensel, like, sure, he's going to add more maybe value than Stamkos in the 200-foot game and his scoring ability, but like, why move on from a legit top six center to get another top six winger with no clear fucking succession plan for an actual 2C? Like, it's just maybe this is, maybe they've cleared the runway for Gensel, but something tells me, based on Brisebois' success in the past, that like they can't possibly be done, even if they sign get like there has to be another trade somewhere to address their center gap. On the flip side of that Sergachev deal, Utah Hockey Club has definitely they've shown up. They've definitely lived to Ryan Smith's really guaranteeing statements of they were going to be aggressive and put together, a respectable competitive hockey team and going out there, and really, you talk about making big moves and, things Christian likes. You go out and you get a number one D in Mikhail Sergachev. You lock up Sean Durzi on a long-term deal at a reasonable, responsible cap hit. You go out and you bring in John Marino, and then you probably pair Marino with Huso Valimaki. And right there, in a matter of 3 days, Arizona went, they've effectively gone from having Arizona's sketchy blue line to one of the stronger blue lines in the league, probably. 4 prime age D-men in Sergachev, Durzi, Valimaki, and Marino. And the only one not under contract with term at the moment is Valimaki, and that could very quickly change. You love to see it from Utah Hockey Club, and you really wish you saw it in the Arizona Coyotes organization. But, a big shout out to the Arizona Coyotes organization / Utah Hockey Club of having a player still under contract with the organization and Shea Weber getting into the Hockey Hall of Fame. Real impressive stuff there from the Arizona Coyotes.
And yet there's still no place for Mogilny after like 15 years of eligibility at this point.
I honestly think with Mogilny at this point, the NHL is frankly just waiting for him to fucking die, and then we'll just posthumously inaugurate him the year after.
So ass.
That if the NHL though plays chicken to the point where they actually go through with that, I actually have to it comes down to the Kendrick Lamar Drake feud of like the Hockey Hall of Fame is such a hater for Alex Mogilny that they would literally wait for him to be dead to put him into the Hall of Fame. Like, the NFL played that game with Ken Stabler, and if the NHL were to play that game with Alex Mogilny, I couldn't. Am I saying it's morally or ethically right? No. Am I saying that it's so fucking petty I respect it? A little bit. As a big Mogilny stan.
They're on Shaquille O'Neal level of hater for him, basically.
Yeah. I don't know. He had to have. I mean, besides him, I don't know. I don't know. It's every year where I feel like we talk about it. We're puzzled. We're like, the politics, and yet, again, you look at even this draft with the impact that Russian players are still having. You see him going the first. You see him going the second. You see a lot of the excitement. Obviously, Liam, you wrote a lot about it, and obviously, the deeper picks from 2 to 7. You mentioned several Russian players. So, again, you still see Mogilny's impact as the first player to defect to North America. Damn.
I bet if Darren York had an HHOF ballot, he would cast a vote for him, considering that just absolute propensity he has for bringing Russians to Raleigh. Like, they're gonna have they have like basically like the full on. They're basically like starting like a practical freaking like Russian community on par with Coney Island there with how many fucking Russians they're drafting.
It's wild.
Yeah.
Like that.
I mean,
Russian.
the whole draft was pretty wild. Even the Wild were wild. You know, I don't know if any team besides maybe the Bruins had an awful draft. And like
Vegas,
Mike,
Vegas is definitely interesting. I know a lot of insider, I won't say insiders, but I know a lot of sports pages have ranked Vegas very low. But again, when you have 4 picks and 7 rounds, and 3 of them, and I think are like the bottom 100. I mean, it's
I
just like Trevor
mean,
Conway, obviously very, very talented, but obviously there's a lot of the non-player things that kind of come into play with the.
oh Connolly. You know, though we've addressed Connolly
Yeah,
pretty consistently on this pod, Damien. So
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
unlike Britta Curl, Trevor Connolly's situation's a little bit more nuanced, and there's a lot more
yeah. There
conversations to be had. And I think that there's a lot of significant pushback against Connolly because he's an easy fucking target.
is. Well, I mean,
But
it's Vegas too.
you know, I look at it this way: they get a goalie in Moisevich, who, for all intents and purposes, was pretty good.
Oh yeah.
Maybe an understatement, maybe an overstatement. I don't know. I mean, Connolly will be a good NHL player. I mean, Swick wasn't bad. And, you know, Van Vliet, we just didn't really see a lot, or Van Villiers, pardon my attempted French, wasn't exactly, like, I look at the 4 picks that they made and just kind of, yeah, I didn't really think one way or another of anything that they did being bad. My problem with the Bruins draft class is really echoing the sentiment of their fans to some degree of, you know, I wasn't that high on Grown World, shoot me, if I'm wrong on that, but like Morello also not super high on, Loki Johansson not super high on either. And you know, I don't think I can be any less high on Dean Latorno. And like, look, I get it. I understand. I kind of like. I agree with Ty Anderson and a lot of Bruins analysts' excitement, but I feel like it's a little bit far fetched to be excited about Latorno in Boston. And it's really a complex like point of view for me, where like I sit here and say, you know, if the Dallas Stars draft Dean Latorno, I think it's a fucking grand slam based on their developmental trajectory and history and what we've seen from Latorno. But for a team like the Bruins, who like when you talk to their fans and analysts, you know, you talk about all the guys they could have drafted in 2015, you know, the Sweeney development curve. And it was like, even if we had drafted Kyle Connor and Matt Barzell, they would have been fucking busts anyway. So you sit there, and these same people are celebrating Latorno, the 6'7" lumbering centerman who is playing Canadian prep. Like, sure, he has athleticism and physical tools that you really like. But with the Boston Bruins' complete fucking incompetence to develop anything that isn't a goalie over the last 10 years, to take the biggest WIP like player you have to shape properly as an organization, like the chances of Latorno being the player that the Bruins drafted him to be is virtually zero because he's in the Bruins fucking dev system.
Yeah.
Like like they should have just taken a high floor, low ceiling player at 25 or taken Cole Hudson. But instead, you know, they go for the home run, forgetting that they're really bad at the thing that they're trying to do with this particular prospect.
Yeah, and I mean, again, a lot of it I've seen is they're obviously hoping that he's going to be the Tage Thompson 2.0, but even Tage is like, I mean, he still had the work in Buffalo's system. So, like,
And
you
St.
know,
Louis's.
yeah, and it took him, it took him a few years to have that 40-goal season where you're like, oh shit, this kid put together. And again, Boston, you look at needs, and again, huge center. You're hoping he's going to fill it, but I mean, you guys have 24, what, about 24 in cap this
Something like that.
offseason. We have
Yeah.
about 24 mil. I know they have to still pay Swayman. Obviously, we're all waiting to see if they actually do end up signing Lindholm. So you kind of start looking at like available players after that.
Well, I'm also starting to hear some. I'm starting to see some rumors that some Steven Stamkos to Boston
Yep.
could be materializing. Nothing concrete, but definitely enough, I think spite from Stamkos, but also, there aren't that many teams in the National right now who realistically, like we can talk until the cows come home about Steven Stamkos' career history and greatness. But when you think about 34-year-old centermen who are virtually defensive liabilities at this point, there are not that many teams out there that actually could theoretically go get Steven Stamkos, and it makes sense in the timeline of their roster configuration.
Yeah.
Like, in terms of the Steve, like, and people will get, oh, we can get, like, Steven Stamkos and the Bruins based on salary cap, ability, history. It's like, and just the fact that they're in trying to win something in the end of the Marchand Coyle, because, like, Charlie Coyle's only 2 years younger than Steven Stamkos at this point. And, like, Marchand being 36, like, Hampus Lindholm being 30. The Bruins are very much, with even with a 25-year-old Jeremy Swayman, like, they're kind of in their window, and it's clear and obvious they're not about to do anything called, like, retool or a rebuild. So they're one of the only teams that I find to be a legitimate suitor for Steven Stamkos that actually fucking makes any sense.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing that was surprising too with the Letourneau pick is, I mean, obviously, again, sometimes you go with first rounders, and especially, I mean, again, late first, a lot of times you're going to wait, a season or two at least for him to come up, but the fact that he's going to be going to, BC in 2025, like, to me, it was kind of an interesting pick because I'm like, that gives me almost more of a, hey, you guys are kind of like in a rebuilding phase if you're expecting your top, obviously top pick this draft. You already know he's not going to be coming to the show for maybe 3 years, 4 years. So, like, for me, it's kind of a weird pick in that sense as far as, like, it's more of a rebuilding than hey, we're going to win now. Let's try to, just get what we can.
It looks like he kind of went the accelerated route and was originally slated to begin at the Heights in 25-26, but it looks like he'll be on the roster this coming season.
Okay.
Yep, we had seen, and even, like, and correct me if I'm wrong, Liam, but you would know more than I would. To make that jump from AAA to NCAA 1, like, that's not particularly common of a jump for a guy who you draft with star expectations.
You know what? And now that I think on it, I think the rationale as to why the process was accelerated was that Will Smith departing for the NHL was what opened up a roster spot, which, like, gives him some massive skates to fill. But he seems like the kind of guy who would actually benefit from having a bridge season in the USHL before making that leap. Just like because of just how much more seamless the transition is from that as opposed to like prep to D1, unless you're like at like Shattuck or whatever.
Like, this just feels like this is a really interesting everything. Like, it makes me feel better about the Beckett Seneca pick, knowing that, like, the Bruins are out here doing equally strange things, but like Ducks fans aren't sitting here celebrating what Seneca could be. Even after Verbeek and Cronin's conversations, like, cool, we drafted a kid, effectively. And I haven't pulled up the hockey prospecting models, but it just feels like the Ducks are drafted Seneca really with the thought process that he could be their Gabriel Landeskog. And as we all know, Landeskog had a very, very, very long and arduous runway before really breaking out as an offensive presence for their organization. And, it's definitely one of those things where it's like an Anaheim fan, you're not really excited that we're basically drafting a potential middle six winger for his quote unquote leadership abilities and heavy play. But it's what we did. It's where we're at. The fan base just kind of has accepted that this was a strange pick, and if it doesn't work out, we're not in the words of Mr. of Cracus Hall. It's not pig lipstick going on in Orange County. Like, the fan base isn't trying to make this something that it isn't. Where like the whole Latorno thing is just way more way more everything than they probably should be about it. But hey, what the fuck do I know?
Yeah, he probably had the best reaction though, I think, out of anybody who's ever been picked at the draft.
Well, yeah, even he knew it was a bad pick in terms of pick value. I mean, out of Duck's first round selections, he's already losing in the fan popularity to Stian Solberg. So, like, his fucking Solberg was tossing around F bombs this morning at the fucking jersey reveal party. Like, not hot mic moments, just throwing around F bombs like it doesn't even matter, which led to apparently a great story about Radko Gudas playing against him at Worlds a couple months ago and being like, yeah, the first thing that this kid ever told me was to go fuck myself in the middle of a game, and now I have to mentor him. World comes at you fast, doesn't it?
Awesome.
So Stian Solberg has already become pretty well acclimated into, Anaheim fans' minds, not for his play on the ice, but because of his personality off of it, which is
Yeah, I honestly, it seemed like there was a ton of excitement around him though when they did pick him. And I mean, obviously in Norway, I mean, have a nice big defense, Norwegian defenseman. It's pretty cool. Is he the highest Norwegian drafted?
no, that was my. If you had watched the live stream by Black Stitch Hockey on Friday night, you would have known that honor was Michael Brandsteg Newgard,
Okay,
8 picks before him.
that's wild.
Man,
No, it's not wild, Damien. Zeev Boyum, that's wild.
Yeah, there's a few picks before, you know.
what what is like going on with like the Iserman and like the rest of that front office camp just like really insisting upon using those picks for middle sixers. Like, you really drafted a guy who profiles pretty much exactly the same as Nate Danielson the year after you fucking took Nate Danielson at 9th overall when there were other higher value selections available. Like, I definitely felt validated when Byron Bader called this out as well.
Well, based on their recent trajectory of some Swedish professional players, yes, I know Brandsteg Nygaard is Newgard is Norse, but it really comes down to, I think that Joe Sakic is listening to too much Swedecore, and I think he just really wants to make the siren charms of NHL rosters.
Well, it'd
Not
have to
too.
be. I mean, well, I'm a little perplexed because it's Iserman that I'm calling out for this. But they
I'm just.
were basically the same guy for rival franchises. Fuck it.
I gotta give Iserman shit for continuously going back to the European well for no
Yeah, it's just you said Joe Sakic in that monologue is the
so
thing.
so here's the thing. I fucked that up, and the reason I fucked this up is I had to watch the season 10 episode Stanley's Cup of South Park last night, so I have Joe Sakic, Steve Yzerman slip on the brain. So I apologize on that.
But I was fine with the ASP pick last year. Like, I thought in terms of relative value, like, and just overall potential excitement, it was better than the Danielson selection. But like, regardless of if they're coming from the CHL or from overseas, it's just like you really just want these like middle sixers with tools. Even when there's something with higher ceilings on the board, when you don't have a lot of like high end offensive talents that fit the longer term timeline in the pipeline at all, really, at this point, it's foolishness.
Yeah, it really is like Yeah, they're a really odd. Iserman's kind of a hack at this point with the Iser plan. Like,
Hmm.
and it really starts to make me wonder if his rebuild in Toronto, pardon me, Toronto, Tampa Bay, was more luck than it was talent. Because like, there's no mystical like Kucherov type pick like in the wings here. Like, there's no there's none of the things that we talk about, and to make a comparison that I've become mildly hated for. I mean, Moritz Seider is not Victor Hedman. He'll never be Victor Hedman. Even though I will say Moritz Seider right now is playing about as well as a washed-up Victor Hedman, comparably. And Red Wings fans can fuck off with their criticisms of that claim and can defend Seider in all the playoff games he's ever been in.
Oh, it's tough.
I mean, hey, when your expected plus minus is like a minus fucking 17, it's not and to only get out of this year is a minus 7. Like, Seider has gotten bailed out by sketchy goaltending in the last, year or two. Like, Jake Wallman got traded and was like traded for fucking nothing. Like, literally traded basically for a pack of fucking stale juicy fruit, and somehow just Hronik gets traded, has an immaculate run the last couple of years in a year and a half in Vancouver. Like, Wallman gets traded and is probably going to be good for San Jose, and yet we're going to run this back with Mo Seider in fucking Detroit, and the Red Wings are still going to fucking suck because they're a fucking shit organization that has poured all their resources into a faux number one defenseman in Mo Seider, and they're just going to sit here and be like, I don't know what the problem is, guys. It's definitely Ville Husso, Alex Leon. Like, it's fucking baffling to me that you look at the underlying metrics and still sit here and be like, yeah, Mo Seider's the guy. He's Nicholas Lidstrom too. He's gonna get us somewhere. And maybe I'm being too critical, but I'm just fucking tired of hearing about how good he is. When every dude who's basically ever played with him keeps getting blamed and traded to another fucking team.
I'm
Yeah.
really thinking about the fact that Danielson is probably going to end up being their 1C just because they can't get their crap together. And just like, I really have respect that kid's two-way motor, 200-foot game, but like, you just gotta have, you kind of want that top six to be something that gives you a competitive edge. Just generally is the means. That's your intention, like when you're trying to construct it, and two, to have enough offensive productivity to justify being giving to justify giving those guys those sort of minutes. And he's like, someone like him is just not really ever going to have either at the NHL level. Would be a more than serviceable 2C, but to have him as the linchpin for a team that is trying to find and reestablish its winning identity in the most incompetent manner possible in a high demand, like high pressure market is just not going to end well for anyone.
Yeah, and it really brings me joy as a hater that the Red Wings are slowly but surely returning to their 1980s stature of irrelevance and disappointment. And it's truly unfortunate that Nate Danielson has the unfortunate reality of being affiliated with that. Like, he really is. He might be this generation's Jake McCabe, of just an all-around fucking great player who's just perennially affiliated with subpar execution and mediocrity despite being a fucking bastion of hope. Like, Jake McCabe in Buffalo was very good. Jake McCabe in Chicago was phenomenal. And even, Jake McCabe in Toronto, he just continues to be a bastion of hope against a sea of fleeting mediocrity. And Nate Danielson may be rapidly following into his footsteps in the Detroit hockey market. But hey, it's not all bad. The Detroit Red Wings apparently, allegedly, according to Spit and Chicklets, come to a in agreement with Patrick Kane. Details not shared yet, but per Pierre LeBrun and secondarily reported by the Chicklets boys, Kane and the Red Wings are very close on a 1-year deal, which is once again an extension of Detroit's mediocrity that we just started talking about. Like, why would you have fucking Alex DeBrincat and Robbie Fabry, even though why have young left-wing and right-wing prospects that can score goals if you're just going to sign a 30-plus-year-old, like, again?
I mean, to be fair, I mean, you're absolutely 100% right. But at the same time, I also feel like Kane down this back half of them when guys like DeBrincat completely disappeared. I mean, I feel like Kane was one of the guys who was still showing up on it pretty much almost every night.
Yeah, cool. I'm proud of Kane. He was the best player in the greatest collapse in modern NHL history.
Uh,
I mean, fuck. Like, Detroit's implosion this year down the stretch is somehow more impressive than the Penguins losing in 22-23 to the two worst teams in the league on consecutive nights to miss the fucking playoffs. And somehow, the Red Wings fuck up last year is more iconic than what Detroit pulled off the year before. But, you know, if you want the poster child from that historic implosion back for another fucking year, well past his prime, be my fucking guest, Steve Yzerman.
it is baffling, and I mean, like, in like last season, you know, I remember DeBrincat. I'm not gonna shit on Larkin. I love Dylan Larkin, but like, they were like a whole nother level at the beginning of the season last year. Like, first 10, maybe 12 games, like DeBrincat and Larkin were above everybody else in points, and then just the team just imploded. But like, you look at that roster, and it's like the configuration just doesn't make any sense.
Well, yeah,
Then the team,
you already said it. You name the only good players on the fucking roster that show up consistently. I mean, it's a team sport, and when you have two guys who are plus players who play heavy defensive minutes, and everybody else has pretty bad expected plus minus or plays in significantly sheltered minutes, Lucas Raymond, I'm looking at you. You don't win a lot of games. And the thing is, Patrick Kane is just a fucking extension of the problem with the rest of their fucking roster. You know, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. You know what they need to do? Go get Tyler Bertuzzi. They never should have fucking traded the guy. Like, sure, like Tyler Bertuzzi, I think adds more value to the Red Wings than re-signing Patrick Kane. Because, like, at least when Tyler Bertuzzi was on the roster, like, he wasn't being lazy and getting beat on the back check. The stupid fuck was in the penalty box. But at least, like, I don't know. I didn't sit here scratching my head. It was, wow, these guys have 3 good players and everybody else sucks. And now it's these guys have 2 good players. I don't know, man. All I gotta say is free Daniel Sprong.
Yeah, I mean,
Send Sprong back where he belongs in Seattle on the wing of Berkeley Catton.
that'd be nice. Oh, for Detroit though, I was just hoping for more of a season from Andrew Kopp, and maybe I just love Winnipeg forwards, and I'm like, yo, dude, like Andrew Kopp, you know, he's gonna be the guy, and then he wasn't the guy, and
what did you expect from Andrew Kopp this year?
Depth scoring, bro. Like, I don't know, Andrew Kopp.
No, don't put this on Andrew Kopp. I mean, I'm a backfill. Andrew Kopp had 33 points as a third C for this Red Wings team.
Yeah.
No, if I'm going to shit on the Red Wings, Andrew Kopp is not the first guy I'm going for. I'd be talking about Joe Veleno before I'm talking about Andrew Kopp.
Yeah, I'm just saying, man. Like, I thought they were going to be better, and obviously...
Number 1 bullshit. I need to cite you on, I think, episode 5 or 6 of the pod where you projected the Red Wings to be a bottom 5 team in the league this year.
I did. But like I said, when you see how Detroit came out in like the first 15 games of the season, and we've seen it before. You see teams come out to a hot start, and you're like, yo, dude, like, it's just, they fell apart so fast, which, again, all 3 of us, I know we're all, you know, obviously you don't always want to admit it, you know, kind of got off on it, obviously. None of us are really particularly big Red Wings fans. I wonder why. But, I don't know. I mean, for me, like, I love Ville Husso. Like, And even for him, he got left out to dry. His numbers are bad. Alex Lyons came in and I mean, he did put together like a good late minute like stretch to try to get into the playoffs, but I don't know, man. They're tanking.
So speaking of self-immolating franchises, how about those? How about the actions of those New Jersey Devils over the weekend? Huh?
Yeah,
Oof.
CTE.
Man, I look at them New Jersey Devils and I sit here and say, what the fuck are you trying to accomplish?
Getting a higher first round pick next season. That's what they're trying to do.
The
Like, I understood the Marino trade. The Marino trade was the only thing they did that I could comprehend. Because trading Marino opened up more minutes for Nemec or Nemitz in a healthy Hamilton to both be playing over 20 minutes a night. That one I got. Opening up some cap space while moving on from Marino as well. That the Marino trade I can take. I can live with it. I can accept it. I know why they did it. The Alexander Holtz trade was weird.
and
Like,
Akira Schmid.
yes,
I
and
feel
Akira
like
Schmid,
the,
but
the
like
thing
Paul
with
Cotter.
the
And
thing
a
with Schmid
nothing
though is I think
pick, basically.
they like oversaturated their own goalies. So the problem is you're like, okay, we goaltending is our issue, and it is, but obviously again, we've talked about it, there are other areas of opportunity for them this season that they need to work on if they want to be a playoff team. And the thing is, like, again, you look at it, you had Akir Schmid, you ran him last year, obviously, him and Vanacek, and obviously Vanacek was horrible. Obviously, again, Schmid did not look great particularly, but again, the team did not play great defensive hockey in front of them. And then, you're like, yo, we need goalies to get us in the playoffs. So for the deadline, you get fucking Jake Allen, who did play really well for him. You get Kaapo Kakinen, who also looked good in his starts, mind you. But like then again, it's like then you make the Markstrom trade. So I'm like you have so many goalies, and again, even last season they had extended or re-signed one of the kids that they had in the AHL. So it's like obviously again, apparently they think Schmid's by I don't know. I don't comprehend Fitzgerald.
Well, I mean, I just didn't get why you go get Paul Cotter in a point like I
Yeah.
get that Alex Holtz was not. Alex Holtz was a victim of the Devils not knowing what the fuck they're doing with developing their young players for the most part.
And
Like,
when
I don't know. I don't
like
know how Jesper Bratt turned out as well as he did to be completely fucking on. Like, Jesper Bratt succeeded in spite of New Jersey's operation. And as much as I like Dawson Mercer, the concept of Dawson Mercer being a top six forward, like giving up on Holtz to go get a third line winger and Cotter, basically a fourth line winger and Cotter, with like nothing really intelligent lined up on the other side of that maneuver. Like, yeah, they have 19 million cap space, and Mercer is really the only guy that they have to re-sign. But like, the only thing I can think of, and the only way that Christian forgives Tom Fitzgerald, the only way, and I hate to put this image in both of your heads, is if Sam Reinhart is a fucking New Jersey Devil tomorrow afternoon. Because unless Sam Reinhart's showing up on a fucking on a free as a free agent signing for them tomorrow, nothing they did here was worth anything. Like, sure, if Sam Reinhart shows up and all of a sudden you have him, or if they pull together, no, I could say they could go get Trevor Zegras, but Zegras being a left-handed shot doesn't for a team that only has one right-handed shot in their entire fucking top nine. If the New Jersey Devils do not have Sam Reinhart on their roster tomorrow night, this was all fucking pointless. If they pull that off, not saying they're trying to, not saying it's in the cards, if they pull that off, I understand what Fitzgerald's been doing. If they don't pull that off, hire me as the new GM. I could do a better fucking
Yeah,
job.
it's like the most worrisome thing is for them is like the entire discourse surrounding this is just like they were adhering to the same mindset that they did when they picked up Curtis McDermott, and it's like our top of the roster is fine, but we don't have enough toughness, and we're gonna get bullied. And it's just like the thing is that picking up Cotter is basically just like a glorified and way too high price tag version of the McDermott trade, and then you add like what's effectively a nothing pick to sweeten the deal because like Vegas is not going to let themselves be bad enough for that third to be a high third. So it's like they really just like they gave up a lot of like you know something of like what could still be like turned around and have some potential for a nebulous concept of like uh, what their roster construction needs to look like and draft stock that doesn't even really count for anything.
Yeah. Yeah, it's on. I mean, I'm curious to see what they're gonna end up doing with that third pairing too, because like again, obviously earlier with the Markstrom trade, you sent Ball to Calgary, so
Well, they
I
did
mean,
just get Kovacevic, I think, from
Yeah,
Montreal.
it was a decent
yeah.
get, I thought.
Yeah.
I mean, I just as long as they don't play him with Brendan Smith. Smith is washed. He was never really that great, and I don't know.
I imagine, barring something remarkable, that they're probably going to run Santeri Hataka on their third pairing this year out of the gates. Probably he's probably their most likely, I would imagine, unless they're drunk enough to think that Anton Siliev is ready to go.
I mean, I think he's under contract for another couple of years anyway, so they would have to really be exercising those backdoor options to get him bought out. But like, it doesn't seem to be uh, really in the cards. Like we're talking like that's probably going to be like a 5 years out sort of thing, based off of
Yeah.
having to fulfill his obligations there, and then inevitably, even for those guys who do prefer, for a variety of reasons, to develop in Russia, that just by virtue of his position and the fact that he's not cut from like an Alexander Nikishin type cloth where he can be making an impact on an NHL roster right away, will be in Utica for a little bit as well.
For sure. And I mean, it's clear and obvious that Seamus Casey's not going to be leaving. I mean, there's no way that Seamus Casey's going to be playing in the NHL this year. But on a semi-positive note, you love to see Treliving re-signing the right guys out in Toronto and Lil Yegrin's 2-year extension and subsequently the multi-year extension keeping Max Domi in Maple Leaf Blue. Obviously, there was a lot of debate of whether or not that was going to happen. Imagine that Bertuzzi is shown the door. Would like to see them re-sign Connor Dewar and then potentially make some maneuvers to upgrade their back end. Definitely a lot of options in for Dallas Cowboys North.
Accurate.
Yeah, ultimately, it was a good draft. We've seen some pretty good maneuvers heading into free agency opening tomorrow afternoon. Um, I think there's definitely some big. I think there's definitely some big things to come in the next 24 hours in terms of trades and signings. Definitely, definitely curious to see what teams maneuver to do. Obviously, I think we're all expecting Utah Hockey Club to make some noise tomorrow. I know there's a lot of expectation that the Anaheim Ducks might do some crazy bullshit in the next couple of days, especially with Trevor Zegras being removed from the jersey reveal trailers recently. I think there's a lot of concern on that front that Anaheim might have some large maneuvering in the back end. Not to pour gas onto those rumors, but definitely something to be mildly concerned about. I hope the Bruins have some crazy shit lined up.
They have to. I mean, if they're trying to win this window and they have that much money, they have to.
So definitely a lot going on. I suspect we're gonna hear some really strong. I wouldn't be surprised if some big news broke before the end of the night tonight. I wouldn't be surprised if at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning, as I'm preparing for work, there's some big news breaking, and wouldn't even be surprised if my phone starts blowing up in the afternoon when somebody makes the big one. But unfortunately, I'm not as good at speculating this year as I used to be.
I'm sorry for the sudden outburst of laugh there, but so there was a bit of discourse. So Derek Dunn, my homeboy over at the Liberty Yell, has been going over some Jet Luchenko tape, and he's like, he notes beginning the deep dive of Luchenko. I mentioned a couple of times earlier. Holy fuck, this junior team is absolutely horrid. They commit heinous war crimes on a ship-by-ship basis. Basically, me during the average Guelph Storm sequence. Will Hardy quote, "That was a masterpiece of dog shit." And sure enough, their radio play-by-play guy himself actually makes the point to respond, saying, the Storm won OHL championships in 2014 and 2019, making four in their 33-year team history. When's the last time the Flyers won anything? And I point this out in the group chat who he is, and it's just like, bro, why is their commentary team coming for the smoke? And our boy Chris, the main host, is just like, I actually kind of respect it.
Yeah, yeah. I see all sides to this one.
Team any better? Like you just look at them and like their team was such bad. And, like I am somewhat weary. Uh, we're in a sometimes it is true, and it's like I think about that series against Sioux, and like I did commit as much attention to every individual series across the three constituent leagues as I possibly could. That was the one I pretty much side-eyed because I knew that the Greyhounds were just going to absolutely steamroll them. And it's just like, it's one of those things where, like, I'm thinking about that pick, and he had like a freaking jet, like the absolutely like nominative determinism, like dictated like speedster, like he had an absolutely phenomenal combine, and his IQ is interesting because he's not the most cerebral guy who's like premeditating everything, but he is very like phenomenal in his instinctual decision making. He hasn't tempered himself to the point where he's using those tools in a way where it's like very calculated and thought out. Although like very few guys at that age do, other that aren't named Matvey Michkov. To provide a recent example, but like having that combined with having like physical attributes that are superior to that of Matvey Michkov, and like I want to point out that his grip strength, like he actually like in that particular department of the combine, he actually beat Caden Lindstrom, which is just freaking ridiculous when you consider the kid's like a 5'11", 182 beanpole or something like that, and it's like there is an interesting thought process behind it to where they went with for like at least like the pick with like a high ceiling that is that has like a potentially intriguing payoff in a couple of years to where I've actually kind of been satisfied with it, especially knowing that Briere wants to keep him in the O until 26, which is probably like a good like sample size for that sort of project, and to where I like actually kind of have really come to admire that selection, despite my like mild apprehension towards it at the time. So it's like I kind of respect the ambition there, if nothing else.
So let me ask you a hypothetical question then. Based on what you've seen from Luchenko, and you and I have both seen enough of Michkov's game to make a comparison. Do you think that 5, 6 years down the road, Kucherov Point may be a very similar dynamic to, um, pardon me, Luchenko and Michkov, knowing that like Point's not the highest hockey IQ player on Tampa Bay's roster, but clearly has enough fucking physical tools and brain power to be able to be an effective, like disturbingly effective centerman playing off of Kucherov's offensive IQ. Like, do you think Luchenko has potentially a similar ceiling with Point when paired with somebody like Michkov at this, several years down the road?
Honestly, yeah. And it's like it's interesting thinking about how he actually has a bit of a head start on Point as well, because like his skating ability is already there in addition to the two-way motor and the different attributes, uh, as well as like the one thing with him is that like his skating is like his best attribute is the immediate acceleration. Like the long term speed isn't there, but you do tend to choose one or the other as a skater, unless you're Jamie Drysdale, in which you're basically maxed out in every attribute, and it's kind of fucking ridiculous. Um, but like, I honestly think that you know um, his with that combination of like playing with like someone who is absolutely cerebral and lethal, and having a similar profile while also reminding me a bit of some other like uh, playmaking types that have come about. Is this an interesting thing about like your model is that he's unique in that some of those like favorable comps are also guys he has playing style similarities with. Like, who was I looking at before? Uh, Blake Wheeler was one name that I kind of looked at and I was like, yeah, I can see that a bit. I don't think Mike Richards is on there currently, but there is someone who's like come up, as well as some other interesting names like Getzlaff, although I think he has like a physical advantage over with the base that Getzlaff started at, and Robert Thomas. Um, whereas you contrast that with like Catton and Draisaitl, like they do not have a similar game, and that I would also say that about Hellenius and Nylander as well. So it's like I can actually see the runway, and I think it's a walkable path overall, and I think that dynamic could be interesting, even though like I, in the base sense, uh, it would require a bit of like an expansion of his ceiling, which is not impossible, but it is difficult. Whereas I think his current ceiling, based off of like the projections we can reasonably make now, are more like 2C. But it's like you never know what might come out of the chemistry that is developed there.
And on that note, it's a 5 of 8. I think we're going to potentially pedal to our big finish, heading into a big day of hockey tomorrow.
Yeah. So just a quick Dev League thing first. So I want to offer my congratulations to the Hershey Bears on winning their Calder Cup, a rematch with the Coachella Valley Firebirds. In particular, I want to give some shout outs to Pierre Dubé for having a hat trick in the deciding Game 6, as well as Matt Strome for tallying the overtime winner, and to Hendrix Lapierre for winning the Jack A. Butterfield Trophy as playoff MVP on the back of his phenomenal 22-point, highlighted by his 15 goals in 20 games run. And in brief CHL news, the Everett Silvertips have still not come to terms with Landon Dupont on his scholarship and development agreement, but per our friends over at Let's Talk WHL on Instagram, there has been some forward movement in those talks, at least. So it isn't a total news desert over there in Washington State, finally, with regards to this very important blind spot that they still seem to not have covered. So we can at least say that there's been progress in that respect. But for my take, I actually have been thinking about this for a couple of weeks now. I really think we need to come to a point where we start evolving the language that we use to discuss different, strengths on top of like strengths in how we evaluate and in regards to talent and it manifests itself in a game situation. I really think, and it's funny because I was actually thinking about this to the NBA Finals, and like hearing the term, "Oh, that's a great basketball play," or whatever. Frequently, it's like, can we move on from like the hockey play and hockey trade terminology already? Like, when are we just gonna fucking like get to the point where we're not dumbing this down to where these are very nebulous terms that could really pretty much mean fucking anything? Like, if you want to talk about this in terms of like high offensive IQ or whatever, or like meaningful like roster bolstering or whatever, like I understand like verbosity isn't always the best, but can we at least evolve the means about we discuss and how discourse is conducted in this sport to where these things actually mean something, and to where we actually are talking about things and just not abstractions. Like, and the fact that this is perpetuated even by like the best and like most talented analysts in this sport, some like of like the brighter minds within hockey operations, is just like a massive point of frustration to me, and I'm kind of fucking tired of it.
Yeah. Feel like setting me up to try to use some good choice words. I don't know. So I don't know. I can keep it short and simple. As a Pens fan, obviously, I kind of called the Carlson deal last year. Obviously, not the pieces involved, but I was excited. But this season, this off season, the really interesting thing, and obviously I knew what it meant from immediately, but obviously Nedeljkovic, he got that 2-year extension. Penguins did place Christian Jarry on the trade block, so it's going to be interesting. Obviously, like you were saying, Christian, with all the next 24 hours is going to be pretty crazy. So I'm excited and intrigued to see. We've already seen goalie trade. So I'm interested to see kind of what his value is on the market, see if Dubas actually does move him, what the value he does get back for him. But it's gonna be interesting. I did also see that Aaron Ekblad was placed on the trading block too for Florida,
I
which
don't know where
again
you see your rumors from, and the trading block don't exist in this capacity in video games.
it does. Gerson Jari is he's been very well, notably incited that Pittsburgh has made him very available. Like I said, Ekblad, I've heard, but again, when you win the Stanley Cup, obviously again, cap, everything else, it's not a surprise. So it's something to keep an eye on, see, if something does get pulled, but it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I guess I'll wrap up pretty short and really just give a lot of props to Mike Greer for having such a fucking phenomenal draft weekend out in San Jose. I hate the Sharks. I'll always hate the Sharks, but for all the criticisms Greer has received for inheriting a fucking shit show and disaster, the last, week or so with the Wallman acquisition, the use of his draft picks after Celebrini, just a great job by him, and really just wanted to double down on Mike Greer deserving his appreciation, and hopefully, as long as this rebuild is going to go on, and they're not going to be a playoff team for a couple of years. Really just hoping that the Sharks organization isn't so fucking morally bankrupt that they relieve him of his duties before he gets to see this through to its conclusion. Because he's done some really fucking spectacular work in putting together a decent prospect young core after inheriting literally a wasteland.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild, like, thinking about, you step back a couple years, like, you have a prospect pool headlined by William Eklund, and no shade to him. Like, I definitely admire, like, what he can bring to the depth part of a roster. But, like, now, like, you step in, like, you got the right pick for the timeline, and with like a very impressive ceiling with Will Smith right from the jump, and then like you get to a point now where like you could take Celebrini away, and they'd still have a very persuasive case for the best prospect pool in the league in pretty quick order. So handful of years from now, we'll see the fruits of that labor put in to a broader and more fleshed out context. And I imagine it's going to do some pretty impressive things. Yeah, it's a pretty active weekend for us as we took on, our first draft and our first commencement just as it gets underway for the free agency window. There's a lot of intrigue that's set to happen as names hit the market with the QO deadline having just occurred a few hours ago. And now things opening up. Maybe we'll see, some names go to arbitration over the ensuing few months or whatever. Maybe there will be some intriguing trades. The trade market doesn't have quite the same level of activity in eras past now, but there are still things that can happen that can absolutely change the fortunes of franchises, or represent the decision markers that they hit at this time of year. So it should be fun to keep track of that, and we'll be there every step of the way. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening on Spotify from the future. We will see you again soon. Take care, everybody.